You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lemons podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're going to make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show.
Okay, well, I started playing music when I was about 7. I started on the drums, and shortly after I started playing guitar, and I was very, interested in learning whatever the hit songs were at the time. And in 2001, September 11th, I combined a poem I had written and somehow began writing a melody to it, I guess, because I was in New Jersey at the time of the attacks on September 11th, and I lived in New York City, so it was just like a very close thing for me. And I don't know why that day, I was able to start writing melodies with lyrics, but it happened, and then ever since then, I began studying different types of songwriting techniques and tried developing a sound. And I would say about 7 years ago, I moved to Miami, where I began producing a little bit, but really focusing on my my songwriting. And I released a few albums in the past independently, and but then I began writing with other people and working with other producers, and was able to attract the attention of my label and was able to get signed. And now I'm putting out my debut album, which will release sometime, I would say like in November probably. And I'm just about to release my third single from it called Shout Out Loud.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you said that you started kind of writing melodies prior to after the 9/11 attacks, and I mean I'm sure everybody was completely moved on a global scale after those attacks. So could you write melodies prior to that, or did you kind of notice a change after those attacks? Did something kind of hit you?
Yeah, just like that night, I just started playing chords and singing. I don't know why, but it was weird. But maybe it was something psychological about what had happened, being the most like intense experience of my life up until that point. I don't know. Maybe I was seeking like another way of venting, and somehow the actual combination of melody and performing or playing guitar was like came out.
And what are some other during that time, and even today, what are some things that you kind of use to vent, I guess you could say, and use as an outlet?
I like to talk to my friends and my wife about different things that are on my mind. I'm a recovering addict also, and I was in rehab for about a year ago almost, for Adderall abuse. I had a big issue with Adderall, and ever since I got clean, things started to be actually a little bit more hard to handle because I wasn't medicated, and so I would rely on people other than pills to make me feel better. So calling a friend or just like writing down my thoughts in a book or something like that is really what I would do.
Do you go back and you listen to the music that you wrote when you were an addict versus the music you're writing now, and do you notice any like big changes?
Yeah, the biggest change is that I think that the music sounds a little bit more unique and less like I'm trying to mimic either something on the radio or my whole the majority of this new album was finished when I was sober, but a lot of it was sort of like written. The ideas I had in the beginning were written throughout the past few years. So I'm very happy with like how my sound has evolved into what it has. And I think that I just think that I don't have that raciness in my daily life anymore that makes me feel like I need to be exactly like somebody else. I'm able to sort of accept the things that I've done and write according to what I feel in the moment and not what's technically popular right now.
Why do you kind of focus on writing what's not popular versus, what is popular? Because I know a lot of people try to jump on that train, and especially songwriters and producers, they try to jump on that train of popularity so they can kind of maybe tag along on somebody else's success. And why do you think that's important to kind of steer away from that?
Well, primarily because nobody knows what's going to work. And if you listen to like the top 100, it's filled with different genres. So for someone, to assume that they know this magical formula of what works is just not possible. So I won't say that I've never, had the thoughts of trying to, mimic others, but I realize that there's just no point in trying to copy something that you don't. That's one, not yours, but more importantly, there's just no solidified formula of what works. So I just think that it's easier on the soul to like just write naturally, and from there, get feedback.
And I hear, a lot of people say that you don't want to copy people, obviously, because, that leads to lawsuits and just, it doesn't sound good on yourself because like, oh, you sound exactly like Bruno Mars. Well, there's already a Bruno Mars. So why would you want to replicate Bruno Mars? So I always hear the term, like, be heavily inspired by them. And that comes across many different things, whether you're designing a website or you're writing music or you're building something new. It's become heavily inspired by them. So I think that's kind of cool and important to become heavily inspired rather than copy.
Totally, I agree.
Let's dive into a little bit of your track in collaboration with Kevin Rudolf. And I loved Kevin Rudolf, or I still do. One of his Let It Rock tracks, and there was one other track that I'd drawn a blank on that I
I
used to
made
listen
it.
to. There was one other one.
Welcome to the world.
Yes. Yep, that's it. That's it. Welcome to the world. Those are my two clap ones that I always used to listen to on repeat when I first discovered them. But how did you kind of come together with Kevin, and how did that collaboration come together?
So a friend of mine knew him, and he was selling some guitars. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of get in front of him by pretending to be interested in his equipment, because I had no experience like with anybody in the music business beforehand. And I knew that like I felt that I had something going for myself. I just didn't have anybody to share it with. It's very hard to like come across a connected person in music business that's actually legitimate. And so I essentially pretended to be interested in his guitar. I ended up buying one of his guitars for like $400 with the intention of playing my music for him while I did that. And while I tested out the guitar, my goal was to play my songs to hope that he would enjoy it, which he did. And that's really how we got started, was because I took a risk and invested a few $100s into being able to play in front of somebody like that, and it actually worked. So that's how we, once we started, after that happened, we started, getting together almost every day and writing, and then we decided to collaborate on Good Life.
That's genius. I'm always Yeah, that's genius. You got to like quote unquote pretend that you're interested in the guitar, and you ended up buying a guitar and look.
Bought it just like what happened exactly was like my friend was like, don't play your songs for him, like, because like he didn't want me to come off that way, and I was like, I'm totally coming off that way, like. So I was like, so what I did was when my friend was there, I pretended that I left my wallet, so I asked Kevin if I would be able to come back the following day to pay for it. So he said yeah. So then I came back alone without my friend, and I was able to like literally play a bunch of songs for him. I then took the guitar, and then I just like harassed him on text for like a month or two until he would finally meet up with me and work with me. So
That's
it was
so
brave.
cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like one of those things that you just need to like, the way I saw it, the worst thing would happen is that he'll say no, or he'll be like, "You're crazy. Why are you still like stalking me?" or whatever it is. But I just like I had no other like hope. Like I didn't know anybody, so I just was willing to do whatever it took to get in front of someone, and I paid for it, and that was how it really started for me. That's literally how I ended up getting signed and all that stuff. He was the initial, first guy, and up until this day we still talk every day and we work together, so it's very cool.
Yeah, that's an interesting story because I'm always thinking of things like that. And I have a friend that has a similar story where he went to buy I believe it was an audio or a stereo of some sort, and it was just on OfferUp. And he went to meet the guy, and he found out it was the recording engineer for one of his favorite rock bands.
Wow.
So he or it was like the guitarist or something. I don't remember the story. It's been a while since I've ever heard it. But yeah, he went in and he met this guy, and it was like the recording engineer or the guitarist or the drum player for one of his favorite bands, and he just connected with them, and he was kind of like starstruck at first. He's like, "Wait a minute, you're this person." And he connected, and then he got internshiped, and he helped. I mean, it's just crazy how that kind of unfolded. But stories like that happen all the time, and like with you, he was selling a guitar, and you just got in front of him, and you even played a little trick on your friend. You're like, "Oh, I forgot my wallet. I'm going to come back tomorrow and pay for it," hoping that you're not going to come with me so I can play some tracks for him.
It was like a completely planned out thing. But, and what, it's hard for people to do that, but at the same time, it's also really hard to pursue music as like a career. And I think that going outside of your comfort zone sometimes, and going out on a whim and just trying stuff that may feel uncomfortable in the moment, could pay off. I'm not, condoning any crazy behavior, but like, I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if my friend was going to find out or whatever, but on a certain level, like, I didn't care because I knew I was doing something so terrible. It was just like, I had this opportunity right now, and like, I've been pursuing my music for so long that like, I just needed to take it. So I did.
Right. And that leads to another point too. And you hear so many like crazy stories, and it's like, that's a little too far. You know what I mean? Like some people take it, like if you were, for example, invited over to his house or something very personal to him, and you kept showing up at his house, that's different. That's
right,
crazy.
of course. Yeah, that is crazy.
But, just doing things like what you had done, meeting up with him, playing some tracks, and then, saying, "Oh, I'm going to come back and pay for it tomorrow," and doing all this stuff, like that's different. And then you texted him and just followed up with him, that's a genuine connection.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's for sure. And and it turned into a very good friendship, which lasted. So that's also cool.
That's definitely cool. And it's always, the music business is all about who you know. And, you connect with one person who has a whole network of connections, and then you connect with one of their connections, and they have another network of connections. So it's just kind of like this ripple effect, and people, and kind of like the degrees of separation. It's crazy, and
yeah, totally.
I actually moved from Florida to Los Angeles about a month ago. And prior to that, I was in a mentorship with somebody who was very involved in the music industry prior to coming here. And we connected, and he has a friend out in Los Angeles who is doing producing work. And he produced for one of my favorite artists. So it's like just those degrees of separation. I'm literally a degree of separation away from 2 degrees of separation from one of my favorite artists. And it's just crazy on how that works.
Yeah, it is cool. You just have
Um,
to stay open-minded and take everything as it comes, and not, worry too much about what it means, but rather just go for it.
exactly. So when you're in the studio, you're working with Kevin, and all of these ideas are flowing. But what are some things that you guys worked on, and what are some other things some ideas that you guys tossed around? And did you kind of learn from his workflow and vice versa?
We knew that Good Life, like I had brought Good Life to him, and he felt that that was a strong song that he could add to, and we began sort of like co-producing it. He produced the majority of it. I played a little bit on the song, like piano and some guitars, but it was, we had really good chemistry right out of the gate, and we sort of, I said to him, I want to be like a marionette, like I don't know what to do. So why don't you just be the one that decides, and I'll be able to blame you if it's wrong, like that type of thing. And it was good because he knows exactly what to do, and he's a very highly regarded producer and songwriter. So I really sat back and kind of like enjoyed the show and let him sort of like, tell me different things, what to do where, and so on and so forth.
So when you were working on the song, what is something that he maybe told you that you really like? Well, that's a good idea. I should try that. Is there anything that kind of stuck out for you?
Yeah, with my guitar playing, uh, he was very strict on how I played, like the style of strumming that I played. The easy way of playing for me is almost like this swingy type of way where so like, but he felt that a more straight pattern was better. So I remember like almost having to relearn certain parts of the song to accommodate his idea, which ended up being the way it went and like what sounded best. So I would say that his like attention to detail on me tracking my guitars was really cool to experience, because it wasn't like, oh, just play your guitar once or twice. I must have played it like 50 times,
Yep.
for him to like accept that take.
Yep. It's all you gotta. I mean, I hear those stories all the time of people in the studio. Even when I was going to school for music production, we're in the studio and you record 60 to 100 different things, and you just got to have that right take, that exact right one, and then you kind of comp everything together.
Totally.
So after you worked with Kevin and everything, you're still good friends with him. You're still connected with him, and you're actually good friends with him now. So now, what are some things would you want to work with Kevin again, or would you have any like future plans to work with him?
So Kevin is the executive producer of my album. So he's essentially overseeing the production for all 10 tracks on the album, or has already, because it's recorded already. So he was in the studio a lot with me over the past 6 or 7 months, and working with other producers to try and get the right sounds. And he's essentially part of my team right now, in terms of like my inner circle when it comes to like writing and, you know, different things like that. So right now we're, releasing singles, and we're getting some good feedback and response from people. So he's just, he's doing his own thing musically, but he's helping me out a lot.
That's awesome. That's all. That's what the industry is about. Once you get those connections and really kind of using them and learning from everybody, and like you said earlier, keeping an open mind to everything, because you never know what you're going to learn and where it's going to take you.
For sure.
You know. So who are some other artists that you would like to work with? Are there any out there that you would like just dream of working with?
Totally. Gavin DeGraw. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he had a big song called "I Don't Want to Be" back in like 2004. And a guy named Matt Carney.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty. They're not on the radio right now, but they're just very, very much what I listen to a lot. and I'm inspired by. And I think that Kevin has worked with Gavin in the past, and I was able to FaceTime with him, which was really awesome. And hopefully one day I'll be able to work with him. But you never know. I'd like to. I'd also love to. I'd also love to work with like people like Justin Bieber and Katy Perry and all those people. Just because blending some of my style with theirs, I think would sound really cool.
Yeah, those are definitely big. I think a lot of people want to collaborate with them, but again, they're one of my favorite artists is Justin Bieber. I've always thought he was an incredibly talented individual, even though a lot of people knock on him. He's got a good voice. He's a great dancer. He could play guitar, play piano, drums. He's just an all around talented person. And Katy Perry's been around for years, and I love her voice and her style. And yeah, that's great. And I think I listened to a couple of your tracks prior to the podcast, and a few days ago when I was conversing with everybody via email, and you got some good stuff, and I can definitely see those collaborations coming together sometime.
Cool. Well, thank you. That's nice. I hope
Yeah.
that does happen.
Yeah. So when outside of like music, are there anything else, like any other people that you would like to collaborate with? Like maybe during a show that you would like to do, like maybe production wise, maybe a lighting designer, anything like that?
I've really never had any real live events like that before. I've never really, been exposed to like people that build stages or do lighting shows. I'm pretty open, to who I work with on that front. But I'm going to be going on tour. We're sort of like figuring out who the best person is for me to open for. But I'll definitely I'll keep you posted. I'm sure we'll be in LA also. And
Definitely.
I was just there for a morning show called Good Morning La La Land. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
But it's so yeah, we were just there, and yeah, I think that it'll all work out. It's just a matter of like continuing to pursue what you love, and not and to not let a no or a delayed response sort of like be the reason you don't do something. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people could be successful. I think the people that really are successful are those that like are able, not just willing, but are actually able to like not only withstand rejection, but able to like withstand if you need to like eat McDonald's every day for like a year, so that you could afford to be an artist and sort of like not work, so you could put all of your heart into it. It's very hard. Some people can't do that, and some people can't have other commitments and physically can't. So I think it's a combination of like the reality, which is like how available you make yourself, but also to what level are you willing to sort of like suffer during this process. Because overall, like there's so much music out there, that there's so many people in the world that are accepting of so many different styles of music. I think many people could connect with fans that they probably aren't aware of. They're just either discouraged or haven't found the way yet. But new music is something that is always going to be needed. So I really believe in like pursuing it full force, and withstanding rejection, and withstanding however much time it takes, so that you could reap the benefits of working hard and seeing it follow through.
I live by the hard work pays off, and I think a lot of people, you're starting to see it as well. If you've got to live on McDonald's, then so be it. If you've got to live in a bedroom with two other people so you can be in the studio or fund your project, then that's what you have to do for 6 months or whatever. So it's just sacrificing and all that stuff. So it's always inspiring to hear the different struggles that people go through to get to where they're at now, because I think everybody learns from it, and it's kind of a reality check to me, like for other people, including myself, like, dang, if I want to do music or I want to do anything, I'm going to have to make big sacrifices.
Right.
Let's get into that. What are some of the things that you've had to sacrifice in your career to get to where you're at now, to working with Kevin and, now putting a tour together and, it's starting to pick up a little bit.
So I didn't go away to college. I always stayed home. I never really cared much about like a social life. I cared most about pursuing my music and getting through the beginning phases of playing out in New York City where I'm from. And I would say that a lot of my like teens and when I was, in my early 20s were like occupied by just like living at home and just pursuing music and not focusing so much on like whether or not I was at a party or dating or whatever it was. I knew that I needed to focus on that, and I just sort of like would write instead of going out on a Saturday night, and I would perform an open mic every night of the week instead of doing other things. And I would never take a real job. When I mean real job, like a real job that requires a commitment. I would always like do like just either like part-time things or random things like I don't know, some like marketing gigs or whatever it was, but I just like refused to really like do anything that full time. And it eventually like it got my parents concerned until they were able to see that, I was able to actually attract the interest of people and draw a crowd to my shows and stuff like that.
That's awesome. And like, again, you made lots of sacrifices and you refused to kind of do all of those things. And I think a lot of people take those jobs and they think, they work a 9 to 5 and they're doing 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then on top of that, they're trying to do music. And for them, it doesn't work. And it's a struggle because, I mean, music is a full-time job. You're always writing, you're being inspired, you're recording, you're producing, then you're releasing, and then you've got to, track the release and engage with the fans and tour and all that stuff. It's like a whole funnel of just nonsense and all kinds of craziness.
Right. It is. Hearing you say that is like, I can't believe I've done all that. It's like so hard to believe that I just sort of like dodged every bullet and was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm doing this. And like just always stayed true to what my passion was, despite, what my friends were doing or how much money they were making or anything like that. There was nothing more important to me than this. So I think that's kind of why I'm like here now and able to actually make a living doing it. Because it didn't happen overnight. It took a long time of like not knowing, and there were so many like doubts of if it were going to work or not, and so many people like tried to scam me in the beginning until like things got legit, so it's like things fall into place, but it just takes time to figure out your sound and figure out who's the right people that you want to work with. And it's just like it's a hard process, but it's totally possible for people to do. And it's not like this secret society that sometimes people think it might be. It's just a matter of determining how much time and like how much time you're willing to put into it. And if it's all of your time, well, then you might really have a shot, because that's the only way it could pay off, is if you commit all of your time to it. It's just impossible to be available to do things like people who are recording engineers have a 9 to 5 job and they work at a recording studio, or people that are mastering engineers or mixing engineers or photographers or videographers, stuff like that. They all have technically like 9 to 5s type of things. That's their job. You need to make sure that you're available to fit yourself into all those different time slots, and it would just be impossible to do all the necessary things in terms of content and making yourself available to either travel and all that if you're you can't do that while you're attached to a 9 to 5.
No, you definitely can't. And first of all, kudos to you for being able to like pursue that and kind of persevere through all of that stuff. You know, like you said, you were going out with your friends, and I'm sure there were many times where you were very, very tempted to do so, go out and have a good time with your friends and all that stuff. So kudos to you for sticking to it and kind of pursuing your dreams. You're welcome. So what are some of the things that you where people were very doubtful on, and how did you kind of get rid of that negative energy and keep going? Because I know some of the things that people say to you, whether it be friends, family, or even random strangers, just say to you and it kind of gets to you and thinking, what am I good enough? Like, is music really the thing that I should be doing, or is there another calling for me?
Right. I mean, my parents always supported me, but they also were harsh critics. They didn't, my music style is not necessarily theirs. So a lot of times, my songs that are like ballads, my mom would say, speed it up or whatever it is. And it's important to like remember that, opinions shouldn't guide, where you go. They should help um, guide you to determine if you want to make, a change in your thought process. So like for me, whenever somebody like gave me their opinion, I wasn't like, okay, I need to switch my thought process right now. It was kind of like, okay, this person feels that way. Do I agree with them or should I? So a lot of it was kind of like just believing that even when there's no hope, like that there's got to be someone else out there besides me that hears something, even if it's not the closest people to me, chances are that it won't be because they're too busy being scared of you failing and you not getting hurt. And that's why I think that sometimes taking advice from like the closest people to you may not be as authentic as a guy who literally doesn't care about you, because that'll be a very authentic response. He doesn't mind if your feelings are hurt. He doesn't have any other agenda. He just wants to sort of like hear a good song or not hear it. Like I just got I get a ton of positive feedback from people. And someone just said that they stumbled across my music video for All That I Got Tonight, and that they're excited to listen to more of my stuff. Like that's just one person in Boston that like happens to like what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. It's just there are people out there that you could connect to. It's just really a matter of being willing to spend the time to find them.
Do you think, I mean, I mean, this is for everybody. This is for a lot of musicians, and I'm sure you've experienced this, that you can't please everybody. And if you're working super hard to try to do so, you may fail, or you probably will fail.
I
So,
mean, that's for sure. Like there's just too many people out there to think that you're going to be able to accommodate like a whole planet of people. It's just not even worth trying. Just that's why when people like I hear a lot of people talk about they like to write songs that are this, or they like to write songs that are motivating or inspiring or this. It's like I like to write songs that make me feel good and alleviated, because I write to alleviate my tension and stuff like that. It's a very personal and selfish process, and I do it because it's my way of providing therapy. I'm glad that I feel comfortable sharing it with people and hoping that they also like it. But in no way am I really. I'm not writing. I'm not. I mean, it sounds horrible, and I always preface it like this, but like the reality is I write to make myself feel good with the hopes that what I wrote to alleviate the stress or anxiety that I had will hopefully, be able to inspire somebody else. But does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like that's the way that I go into writing a song, because the other way would just be like fake, like I don't know, like that for me at least, like unless you have a specific reason you're writing for something, or if you have a plan to write a song for someone. But when it comes to like doing my own types of therapy for myself, like I'm very selfish about it, because I write, like that's why I write to feel better, and then I share it.
I think you're definitely not the first person that has said that. So it's kind of resonating and clicks to me, to hear those types of things. Or like, I write for myself, and as you should write from experience, from your own emotions, because if you're trying to write about your brother's emotions or your sister's or your cousins or your best friend's emotions and how they went through a breakup, that's not possible. That's fake. That's not authentic, because your emotions, you're not going to be able to feel their emotions. So you writing on behalf of yourself and kind of feeling and experience and sharing those. And it's either like, oh, if you share it with the world, it's like, oh, you either like it or you don't. If you don't like it, I don't care, because it's for myself. You just happen to like it or you don't.
Right. That's precisely how I feel.
And that's how music should be done. And I think a lot of people think that, oh, like, what if somebody doesn't like it? Well, so what? You had a specific moment in time and relationship or whatever that you went through, experience that you went through, and you're writing about it and sharing about it. Because when you share that music and people connect with it, you're gonna be relatable. And that's I think what's important today, because some of my favorite songs are the songs that I can relate to the most.
Right.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone out there when you share your music and you realize it's like, wow, a lot of people feel this way, or a lot of people have went through a similar situation. It kind of solidifies like, oh, I'm not alone. I am, this. It's not a unique situation. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. So that's all the questions that I've got for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add for anybody? Anything else that you want to maybe touch on and we can talk about?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. It was very fun, and I just think that it's just important to remember that every second that passes is not recoverable, and sometimes it's really hard to pursue your dreams because it's not accepted. But it's important to know that you have this one opportunity and this one shot to do something really pleasing for yourself, which I think is very important. And I would just encourage your listeners, if they have a skill or talent that they feel like is worth pursuing, that to at least give it a shot, because nobody's gonna pursue it better than you will.
Excellent ending point. And I think that's phenomenal. I can't close out any better than that. So how can the listeners keep up with you and follow you?
So they could follow me at Judah Holiday, Judah Holiday, spelled the normal way, and that's really everywhere, like on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. JudahHoliday.com. My name is that's where you could find me, and I'm about to release my single on August 13th called Shout Out Loud. And, I'll be releasing a lot of music this year. So I'll definitely keep in touch with you. And maybe I'll try and get Kevin to hit you up also.
That would be amazing. I'd love to connect with Kevin and have him on the show, or even just chat with him and kind of pick his brain on the music industry. It's definitely open to that. So I'll put all of your links, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff in the show notes below, so everybody can just easily click and follow you if they want to keep up with you. So I want to extend a huge thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join me on the show and chat with me about your career in music and your music as well.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely, definitely. Thanks, Judah, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too. Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. I'm so excited to have had Judah on the show, and I love having beginning musicians on the show. I mean, he's been doing music for many, many years, but his career is just starting to pick up and kind of take off. He's working with major producer Kevin Rudolf, who I've been a fan of for many years, but it's always exciting to see these budding songwriters and artists kind of take off, and I always love having them on the show so we can get that beginning story. And I'm so excited to watch and see Judah grow and how his album comes out with Mr. Kevin Rudolf. In fact, I just downloaded, right before editing this episode, I just downloaded Kevin Rudolph's Welcome to the World, and I was jamming out to it, and I just forgot how much nostalgia that track brings to me. So many younger years and different listening on my CD player, and I think I had the first generation iPod at that point, and I remember buying songs on iTunes, and it just brought so much nostalgia back to me. So I'm glad to have had Judah on the show to bring all of that back, as well as hear his story and how he's working with Kevin and kind of beginning to grow his career as well. So thanks again for tuning in this week. Just before we head off and I let you go, don't forget to sign up to my mailing list, as it helps me notify you when new episodes like this are live. I would also appreciate if you would support me on Patreon, as the money that I make from Patreon goes directly back into the show. I would also really, really appreciate a 5-star rating and or review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, as it helps me grow the show and helps it be discovered by new listeners like yourselves. And lastly, there is a link to a Google form for a guest request. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please send it over to them or fill it out, and I will reach out if they are a good contact for the show. So thanks again so much for tuning into this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons, and we will see you next week on When Life Hands You Lemons.